My name is Emma Harper, and at 35, I built a $30 million company from the ground up without ever stepping foot in a college classroom. For years, I quietly poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into my family's needs, while they dismissed my ambitions as childish daydreams, the foolish pursuits of a girl who'd never amount to much without a degree. Last month, at my mother's 60th birthday dinner, everything shattered when she called me a reckless failure and told me to get out of her house. She had no idea the empire I'd built. The look on her face 5 weeks later, when the truth came out, was worth every tear I cried that night. Before I tell you how I went from being my family's financial lifeline to being labeled a failure by my own mother, drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from. Hit that like button and follow if you've ever felt underestimated by the people who should believe in you most. This is my story, a journey of grit, rejection, and finding my own path. I grew up in a quiet suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina, where life followed a predictable script, like a well-rehearsed play. My mother, Margaret Wells, was a high school history teacher who believed a college degree was the only ticket to a respectable life, the golden key to stability and status. My father, Charles Thornton, was a city planner who echoed her obsession with credentials, always preaching about the security of a real career with a corner office and a pension. From a young age, I felt like I didn't belong, a square peg in a family of round holes. My siblings, Nathan and Catherine, slipped effortlessly into the family mold. Straight A students, debate team stars, college-bound with polished applications. I was different, always chasing ideas that baffled my parents, sparks of ambition that flickered in my mind when other kids were content with allowance money. At 11, I started a pet sitting service, scribbling flyers with crayons and markers, offering loyalty discounts for weekly bookings and extra treats for dogs who didn't chew my sneakers. I'd jog across the neighborhood, leashing up dogs like Rusty, a golden retriever who'd slobber all over my jeans, earning $10 a walk when other kids charged $5. I'd kneel on the grass, scratching Rusty's ears, promising Mrs. Larson an extra lap around the park if she booked me for the month. I kept a spiral notebook, tracking every client, their dog's quirks, and my earnings, feeling like a tycoon with $50 in my pocket by week's end. By 14, I was flipping thrift store furniture online. Mid-century chairs, quirky brass lamps, scuffed-up dressers I'd spotted at estate sales. I'd haggle with sellers, learning to read their hesitations, dropping a $50 asking price to $20 with a shy smile and a quick pitch about being a broke high schooler. I taught myself basic upholstery with a $15 staple gun I bought at a hardware store, turning a tattered $10 chair into a $100 sale on eBay. I'd haul my finds home in a borrowed red wagon, my sneakers crunching on the gravel driveway, then spend nights in our garage sanding wood until my hands ached, the smell of sawdust and varnish clinging to my hair. I'd scroll through online forums, learning how to photograph furniture to highlight its curves, boosting my listing's views. My parents saw these ventures as distractions, cute hobbies at best. Emma needs to focus on school, not these little schemes. Margaret would sigh over her meatloaf at dinner, her tone heavy with disappointment, her fork tapping the plate for emphasis. Daydreams don't pay for a mortgage. I'd sit at the table, pushing peas around my plate, biting my lip to keep from saying that my $200 from a refinished table was more than Nathan's summer job at the hardware store earned in a month. Charles would glance at me, his eyes narrowing. "You're smart, Emma, but you need a degree to get anywhere. This stuff's just playtime." Their words stung, but they planted a seed of defiance. I'd show them what playtime could do. High school was a tightrope walk, balancing their expectations with my restless ambition. I kept my grades solid, B's, a few hard-won A's in subjects like English where I could argue my way through essays, but my heart was elsewhere. I'd stay up past midnight binging entrepreneurship podcasts, my earbuds drowning out the hum of our suburban street, scribbling notes on pricing strategies, customer retention, and how to scale a small hustle. I'd sprawl on my bed, my desk lamp casting a warm glow, bookmarking blog posts on SEO and email marketing, my notebook filled with ideas for businesses I hadn't yet dared to start. While Nathan joined the math club to pad his college applications and Catherine racked up awards in Model UN, her speeches polished and her trophies gleaming on the living room shelf, I launched a subscription box for sustainable home decor. I sourced recycled glass vases from a local artisan, organic cotton throws from a co-op in Asheville, and bamboo coasters I found through an online forum. By senior year, I'd netted $4,000, mailing packages every weekend at the post office, my hands smudged with ink from writing thank you notes. I'd refresh my inbox, heart racing when a customer left a 5-star review, gushing about the eco-friendly packaging or the Voss's unique swirl. I'd lie awake, dreaming of turning it into something bigger, something that could change lives, not just mine, but the artisans I worked with. To keep the peace at home, I enrolled in a Charlotte community college after graduation, my parents' relief palpable as they helped me pack my dorm bag. One semester was enough to confirm what I'd suspected. The stuffy classrooms, with their flickering fluorescent lights and outdated business courses taught by professors who'd never run a company, felt like a cage. I'd sit through lectures on supply chain theory, doodling business plans in the margins of my notebook, knowing I'd learned more haggling with thrift store owners than any textbook could teach. My professor, a graying man with a droning voice, once lectured on risk aversion, while I mentally calculated how to ship my subscription boxes faster using a cheaper courier. I'd raise my hand, asking about real-world applications, only to get vague answers about theoretical frameworks. It was suffocating. When I told my parents I wanted to drop out to pursue my ventures, the argument was like a thunderstorm breaking over our kitchen. "You're throwing your life away!" Margaret shouted, her face flushed with anger, her voice bouncing off the linoleum floor. "No daughter of mine will be a dropout scraping by on pipe dreams." Charles slammed his coffee mug down, the ceramic clinking against the counter. "You'll end up waiting tables, Emma. Mark my words." I stood my ground, my voice trembling but resolute. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm building something real, something mine." They didn't listen, their faces set in disappointment, as if I'd betrayed them by choosing my own path. At 19, I left college with $2,200 saved from my side gigs, packed into a savings account I'd guarded like a treasure. Those first months were brutal, a test of endurance I hadn't anticipated. I rented a cramped apartment in a rough part of Charlotte, where the walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor's reality TV blaring through the night, arguments and laugh tracks mixing with the wail of sirens outside my window. I lived on instant noodles, dented canned tomatoes, and clearance shelf bread, stretching every dollar like it was my last. I worked 18-hour days on my online platform, hunched over a secondhand laptop that overheated if I opened too many tabs, its fan whining like a tired dog. I'd brew cheap coffee at 3 a.m., the bitter taste keeping me awake as I taught myself basic coding from YouTube tutorials, my eyes burning from the screen's glare. My first 3 ventures crashed spectacularly, each one a gut punch that left me questioning myself. A custom t-shirt business tanked when my $200 printer jammed, leaving me with a backlog of 50 orders and $800 in debt to angry customers. I'd stay up until 3 a.m., handwriting apology letters with a trembling pen, refunding payments from my dwindling savings, learning the hard way about reliable equipment and the cost of overpromising. I'd stand in my tiny bathroom, the only private space, splashing cold water on my face to stop the tears, vowing to do better. A freelance social media consulting gig burned me out when I undercharged, $50 for a month of Instagram posts, and overcommitted, juggling 12 clients until I missed deadlines and lost half of them. I'd sit on my couch, staring at angry emails, my stomach churning as I realized I'd undervalued my time. A handmade soap business, where I spent hours blending lavender and eucalyptus oils in my kitchen, the scent clinging to my hair and clothes, fizzled when I couldn't compete with big box brands flooding Walmart shelves. I'd package soaps in brown paper, tying them with twine, only to sell 5 bars at a local market for $20 total, barely covering the cost of ingredients. Each failure was a masterclass no professor could offer. Inventory management from a broken printer, pricing from client burnout, Scalability from soaps that wouldn't sell. I'd lie awake on my lumpy mattress, replaying every mistake, my mind racing with what ifs. But each one sharpened my instincts, like a blade on a whetstone. The turning point came at 22 during a small business expo in Charlotte's convention center, a cavernous space buzzing with entrepreneurs and their glossy booths. I was there with a flimsy setup for my latest idea, a sustainable gift box, feeling out of place among polished startups with branded banners and free pens. My table had a handwritten sign, a stack of eco-friendly coasters I'd sourced from a local artisan, and a dream I was too stubborn to let go. That's where I met Victoria Marshall, a 55-year-old entrepreneur with 3 successful businesses under her belt, a catering company that served Charlotte's elite, a retail chain she'd sold for millions, and a consulting firm that advised startups. She stopped at my booth, her sharp eyes scanning my display, her silver bracelets jingling as she picked up a coaster. "You've got fire," she said, handing me her business card with a smile. "Let's talk." Over coffee at a greasy diner, the air thick with the smell of bacon and burnt toast, she listened to my string of failures without judgment, her presence calm and grounding. "Success doesn't need a diploma," she told me, stirring her tea with a clink of the spoon. "The best lessons come from building, not studying." Victoria became my mentor, a beacon in the chaos of my early 20s. She'd call me weekly, her voice steady as she walked me through pricing models, supplier contracts, and the art of pivoting when a plan went south. She never made me feel small for my lack of a degree, instead, praising my hustle, my ability to learn from mistakes. With her guidance, I launched EcoVive Solutions in 2016, an online platform connecting sustainable lifestyle brands, organic skincare, eco-friendly furniture, fair trade textiles, with consumers who cared about the planet. The timing was perfect, catching a growing wave of demand for ethical, green products as millennials embraced conscious consumerism, blogs and vlogs preaching sustainability. Those early months were relentless, a grind that tested every ounce of my resolve. My apartment was half office, my laptop and a secondhand scanner crowding my kitchen counter, cables snaking across the chipped linoleum. I'd work from 4 a.m. to midnight, coding the website with YouTube tutorials, my fingers clumsy on the keyboard as I learned HTML through trial and error. I'd email suppliers at dawn, pitching to artisans in Vermont and California, convincing them to join my platform with promises of targeted marketing and fair commissions. I'd answer customer complaints late into the night, typing apologies for delayed orders while my eyes burned from screen glare. I'd fall asleep on my couch, still in my jeans, my laptop warm on my lap, only to jolt awake at sunrise and start again. Every deal felt like a small victory, convincing a Vermont furniture maker to join by offering a featured blog post, or haggling with a California skincare brand to lower their minimum order quantities so I could afford to stock their products. Every rejection stung, but I'd dust myself off, learning to refine my pitch, to read the hesitations in a supplier's voice. I'd stand in my kitchen, reheating day-old coffee, whispering to myself, "Keep going, Emma. You're close." 9 months into EcoVive's launch, a popular eco-lifestyle YouTuber with 200,000 subscribers featured one of our skincare brands in a zero-waste favorites video. I watched the video on my phone, heart racing as she raved about the bamboo packaging and organic ingredients, holding up a jar of our lavender face cream to her camera. Orders flooded in, hundreds in a single day, crashing our bare-bones website, the error page mocking me with its 503 service unavailable. I spent 72 hours straight with a freelance coder I could barely afford, rebuilding the backend while packing boxes myself. Rebuilding the backend while packing boxes myself on my apartment floor, surrounded by bubble wrap, tape, and stacks of cardboard. My hands shook from exhaustion, my kitchen a chaos of labels and packing peanuts, but that feature brought $15,000 in sales, a fortune to my 22-year-old self. I'd collapse on my couch at 4 a.m., grinning despite the ache in my bones, knowing I'd crossed a threshold no one could take away. I called my parents the next morning, buzzing with excitement. my voice shaky as I shared the milestone over the phone from my cluttered kitchen. "We got featured by a big YouTuber," I said, pacing between stacks of boxes. "It brought in $15,000 in 1 week." Margaret's response was flat, like I'd told her I'd won a school raffle. "That's sweet, Emma, but don't get too comfortable," she said, her voice distant through the receiver. "You can always go back to school when this runs its course." Charles grunted in the background, his disapproval audible even without words. Their reaction cut deep, like a knife twisting in an old wound, reopening the sting of every dismissed flyer, every ignored profit. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the boxes I'd packed, the evidence of my success surrounding me, and felt a fire ignite. I'd prove them wrong, not with arguments, not with pleas for approval, but with results so undeniable they'd have to see me for who I was. That moment became my fuel, the spark that drove me through the next 7 years of building EcoVive into something extraordinary. The next 7 years were a marathon of growth, grit, and relentless problem-solving. EcoVive Solutions expanded from 15 brands in 4 states to 600 partners across the country, connecting artisans, organic farmers, and eco-producers with a global audience of conscious consumers. We sold everything from hemp clothing to reclaimed wood furniture, building a community that valued sustainability over convenience. Every milestone came with a battle, a hurdle that tested my resolve. In year 2, a Black Friday sale overwhelmed our servers, the site crashing under the weight of thousands of orders. I stayed up 48 hours straight with our tech team, a group of 3 bleary-eyed coders I'd hired on a shoestring budget, troubleshooting error codes while personally emailing 200 angry customers with apologies, offering discounts and handwritten notes to save our reputation. I'd type until my fingers cramped, my coffee cold, my apartment a mess of empty mugs and notepads. When a competitor, a sleek startup backed by venture capital, tried to poach our top brands with lower fees, I flew to Oregon, Vermont, and New Mexico to meet them in person. I'd sit in cozy coffee shops or dusty warehouses, sipping burnt espresso or iced tea, listening to artisans' concerns about margins, about visibility, and offering better marketing support, faster payouts, and a promise to feature their stories on our blog. I'd return to my hotel room, exhausted but determined, drafting emails to seal the deals. In year 3, cash flow problems nearly sank us. Growth outstripped our revenue, with inventory demands eating every cent. I went without a salary for 5 months, moved to a cheaper studio with flickering lights and a leaky faucet that dripped like a metronome, and negotiated payment plans with suppliers, promising to settle invoices once orders cleared. I'd lie awake at night, calculating numbers in my head, my heart pounding as I wondered if I'd lose everything. Those lean times taught me financial discipline, how to prioritize expenses, forecast cash flow, negotiate like my life depended on it. I'd sit at my kitchen counter, spreadsheets open, cutting every non-essential cost, from my $10 monthly streaming subscription to my grocery budget, surviving on rice and canned beans. The victories, when they came, felt like miracles. We leased a loft office in downtown Charlotte, a former textile warehouse with exposed brick walls and tall windows that let in golden light. I'd walk through the space at night, alone, running my hand along the 6 desks we'd bought secondhand, hardly believing it was real. Crossing $2 million in revenue in year 4 was a quiet triumph. I celebrated with a solo coffee at my desk, a $2 latte from a nearby shop, too tired to do more. I'd stare out the office window, watching Charlotte's skyline, feeling the weight of what I'd built. By year 7, EcoVive had 60 employees, a sleek headquarters in a Charlotte high-rise with glass walls and a view of the city, and a $30 million valuation after a feature in Inc. magazine titled The Green Revolutionaries. The article called me a visionary redefining commerce, a label that felt surreal but earned. Investors came knocking with acquisition offers, some promising 8-figure payouts, but I turned them down. EcoVive was my vision, a platform that empowered small producers, gave consumers ethical choices, and proved you didn't need a degree to change the world. Selling would have betrayed that, and I wasn't here to cash out. I was here to build something lasting. Through it all, I kept my success under wraps with my family. They knew I ran an online store that was doing okay, but I never shared the full scope: the 600 partners, the 60 employees, the millions in revenue. Their early criticism, Margaret's sighs at my flyers, Charles's lectures about real jobs, Nathan's smirks when I mentioned my profits, had built a wall I couldn't climb. Some part of me hoped they'd ask about my work, show genuine curiosity, but those questions never came. Family dinners were a parade of Nathan's corporate promotions, his boasts about climbing the ladder at his finance firm, and Catherine's stories of her graduate degree, her thesis on education policy earning nods of pride. My ventures got polite nods or silence, as if my life was a footnote. Nathan once said over mashed potatoes, "The internet's full of hustlers who think they're entrepreneurs," his eyes flicking to me with a smirk. Catherine would lecture me about stability, urging me to get a real job while sipping wine. I'd smile, change the subject, and leave early, my chest tight with unspoken words. Despite their indifference, I supported them financially whenever they needed it, always anonymously to avoid their judgment. When Charles had a stroke in year 5, I paid $90,000 in medical bills, wiring the money directly to the hospital so he'd think it was a grant from a charitable fund. I'd check the hospital's payment portal at night, ensuring the transaction cleared, my heart heavy with the secrecy. When Nathan couldn't afford a $30,000 down payment for a condo in Charlotte's trendy Noda district, I funneled the money through a family friend account, letting him believe it was a lucky break from a distant uncle. I'd overhear him at dinner, bragging about his smart real estate move, never suspecting my role. Catherine's dream wedding, a lavish affair with 200 guests, a string quartet, and a venue overlooking a lake, cost $70,000 more than she could cover, so I paid it through an untraceable fund, watching her gush about a generous donor at Thanksgiving, her voice bright with gratitude for a stranger who didn't exist. I'd sit through those dinners, my fork heavy in my hand, biting my tongue as Nathan mocked internet hustlers, and Catherine lectured me about security. The gap between my reality and their perception grew heavier each year, a weight I carried silently. By day, I led a company transforming sustainable commerce, making decisions that impacted hundreds of artisans and employees. By night, I was the dreamer who'd never amount to much without a degree, fielding texts from Margaret suggesting I apply for teaching jobs, just in case. As Margaret's 60th birthday approached, I decided it was time to be open, not to boast, but to bridge the chasm that had grown between us. I bought a generous gift, a $200,000 annuity to secure their retirement, ensuring they'd never worry about money in their later years. I planned to present it at her birthday dinner, along with the truth about EcoVive's success. $30 million valuation, 600 partners, 60 employees, features in ink, an entrepreneur. The night before, I rehearsed my speech in my Charlotte apartment, pacing the hardwood floor, my reflection in the dark windows staring back. I wasn't the uncertain 19-year-old seeking approval anymore. I'd built a company employing dozens, empowering artisans, creating real change in the world. Surely that would earn their respect, maybe even their pride. I practiced my words, imagining their faces softening, maybe even smiling, as they realized what I'd achieved. I couldn't have been more wrong. The dinner started warmly enough, the kind of warmth that masks deeper tensions. My parents' Charlotte home was frozen in time. Same oak dining table polished to a shine, same family photos on the mantel, same faint smell of lavender from Margaret's candles flickering in the center of the table. Charles gave me a stiff hug, his calloused hand patting my shoulder, commenting on my new shoes, a pair of sleek leather flats I'd bought for a business meeting, but not asking a single question about my life. Nathan arrived with his partner, Sophie Reynolds, both in crisp business casual that screamed corporate success. Nathan in a tailored navy blazer, Sophie in a silk blouse with pearl earrings. Catherine and her husband, Benjamin Fuller, breezed in, her voice bright as she bragged about her new role as a school principal, her graduate degree framed and hung in her office. The conversation swirled around Nathan's latest promotion, Catherine's plans for curriculum reform, and Sophie's anecdotes about her law firm. No one asked about my work, not even a passing question to fill the silence. When Benjamin mentioned a news story about sustainable businesses and fast company, a topic I could have owned, Nathan quickly pivoted to his son's soccer tournament, recounting every goal with exaggerated pride, his voice drowning out any chance for me to speak. Over Margaret's homemade pot pie, served on her heirloom china with the delicate gold trim she saved for special occasions, I waited for the right moment, my stomach knotting with nerves. As pecan pie was sliced for dessert, the warm scent of brown sugar and nuts filling the air, I took a deep breath, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "I have some news about my company," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, though my hands trembled under the table. "EcoVive Solutions is valued at $30 million. We've been featured in Inc. and Entrepreneur, and we support 600 sustainable brands across the country." The room went silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, heavy and suffocating. Charles's fork froze midair, a bit of pie dangling precariously. Catherine's eyes narrowed, her lips tightening into a thin line. Nathan smirked, leaning back in his chair, his arms crossed casually. Margaret spoke first, her tone sharp as a blade, cutting through the quiet. "What does that mean exactly? These online companies throw around big numbers to sound impressive." Her words were laced with skepticism, as if I'd invented the figure to impress them. I swallowed the sting, keeping my voice calm, like I was presenting to a boardroom. "It means we've built a platform with $2 million in annual revenue, 60 employees, and partnerships with artisans from Maine to California. We're changing how people shop, making sustainability accessible." I laid out the numbers, our subscription fees, our commission model, our growth trajectory, hoping facts would anchor the moment. Nathan cut in before I could finish, his voice dripping with condescension. "So you hit the jackpot with this internet thing. Nice, Emma. Some of us have real careers with degrees, though." His smirk widened, and Sophie nodded subtly, her eyes fixed on her plate, avoiding the tension. I kept my composure, though my hands clenched under the table. "It's not a jackpot," I said, my voice steady but firm. "It's 7 years of 18-hour days, solving problems, building something that helps people and the planet." Charles's face reddened, his jaw tight, his eyes boring into me. "You think your money makes you better than us?" His voice was low, dangerous, like the rumble before a storm. I slid the annuity papers across the table, my fingers steady despite the knot in my stomach. "This is for your retirement, to make things easier for you and Mom," I said, my voice soft but clear. He opened the envelope, scanned the documents, then shoved them back, his eyes blazing with anger. "What's this? Charity? We don't need your handouts." His voice rose, filling the room, shaking the air. "You've been sneaking around, playing tycoon with your internet money, haven't you?" I took a deep breath, knowing the next words would change everything. "I've been helping for years," I said, my voice trembling now, the weight of the truth pressing against my chest. "I paid for your stroke treatment, Nathan's condo, Catherine's wedding." The table froze, the silence thicker than before. Catherine gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Nathan's smirk vanished, his face paling as he leaned forward. Margaret's fork clattered to her plate, her eyes stunned, her mouth half open. "You've been throwing money at us behind our backs?" Charles roared, standing now, his chair scraping the hardwood floor, his face red with fury. "You think that makes you successful? You're still a reckless failure who got lucky. Get out of my house. Your money doesn't belong here." The words hit like a tidal wave, each one a blow to the heart, crashing over me with a force I hadn't braced for. Catherine stared at her plate, her silence louder than any words. Nathan's lips twitched, almost amused, as if my humiliation was a small victory for him. Margaret whispered, "Charles, please." her voice so soft it barely registered, too late to matter. I stood, grabbing my purse, my legs unsteady but my head high, determined not to let them see me break. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, my voice cracking as I walked to the door with as much dignity as I could muster. The front door clicked shut behind me, the sound final like a lock turning. No one followed. No one called after me. The drive to my hotel was a blur of tears and headlights, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The Charlotte streets, familiar from my childhood, felt foreign now, their glow mocking my isolation. I'd built a $30 million empire, employed dozens, changed lives, yet I was sleeping in a sterile Marriott in my hometown because my family's door was closed to me. In my hotel room, I collapsed onto the stiff bed, the beige walls closing in, and pulled out my laptop. I opened a blank document and listed every dollar I'd given them, the numbers grounding me in the chaos. $90,000 for Charles's stroke treatment, wired directly to the hospital so he'd think it was a grant. $30,000 for Nathan's condo down payment, funneled through a fake family friend. $70,000 for Catherine's wedding, paid through an untraceable fund. $20,000 for their home's roof repair after a storm tore through Charlotte. $40,000 for family vacations to the Outer Banks and Asheville, covering flights and rentals. Over $300,000 in total, given out of love, now thrown back in my face like an insult. I sat there, staring at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Had I been too forward, too proud? Had I misread our family dynamic all these years? The irony was brutal. I ran a company valued at millions, yet I was alone in a hotel room, rejected by the people I'd spent years trying to help. I closed my laptop, curled up under the thin hotel comforter, and let the tears come, silent and heavy, until I fell into a fitful sleep. The next morning, I woke with a clarity that felt both painful and liberating. I couldn't keep living for their approval, chasing a version of love that came with conditions. I booked a virtual session with Dr. Rachel Nguyen, a therapist in Charlotte whose name I'd found through a business contact. Sitting in my hotel room, my laptop propped on a pillow, I poured out the story, the dinner, the insults, the years of hidden support. Dr. Nguyen's voice was calm over the Zoom call, her dark eyes steady through the screen. "Family rejection often mirrors their own insecurities," she said, her words measured but piercing. "Your success challenges their entire worldview, especially your parents' belief that a degree is the only path to legitimacy." She asked me to journal about my childhood, to dig into the patterns that had shaped my need to prove myself. That night, I wrote for hours, my pen scratching against the hotel's cheap notepad, memories flooding back like a dam breaking. I remembered the sting of Margaret mocking my pet-sitting flyers at the dinner table, calling them cute while framing Nathan's math award on the mantel. I recalled Charles lecturing me about real jobs when I sold a refinished coffee table for $50, dismissing my profit as pocket change while praising Catherine's debate trophy. I saw myself at 15, hiding my eBay earnings in a shoebox under my bed, afraid to tell them I'd made $500 in a month because I knew they'd call it a fluke. Those moments had burrowed deep, planting the belief that I was the family failure, the dropout who had to buy approval with secret checks. Journaling became a lifeline, a way to untangle the threads of my family's judgment. I wrote about the time Nathan laughed at my subscription box idea, saying, "Who's gonna pay for recycled junk?" while Margaret nodded approvingly at his realistic outlook. I remembered Catherine's high school graduation, the family cheering as she walked the stage, while my thrift store sales, $1,200 that year, went unmentioned, as if they didn't exist. I saw how I'd internalized their view, believing my worth depended on their validation, which is why I'd given so much money anonymously, hoping it would make me enough in their eyes. Dr. Nguyen helped me see that their dismissal wasn't about me. It was about their own fears, their rigid belief that success only came in one shape: a diploma, a corner office, a predictable path. "You've outgrown their framework," she said in our second session, her voice steady. "Now it's time to outgrow their approval." Her words hit like a revelation, both freeing and terrifying. I'd spent my life proving myself to people who'd never see me, not because I wasn't enough, but because my path threatened everything they'd built their lives around. 2 weeks after the dinner, I made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. I'd moved to Savannah, Georgia, to my investment condo on the coast. I'd bought the place a year earlier as a rental property, a modern loft with marsh views and floor-to-ceiling windows, but I'd only visited twice for quick getaways. I'd bought the place a year earlier as a rental property, a modern loft with marsh views and floor-to-ceiling windows, but I'd only visited twice for quick getaways. It was time to make it my home, to build a life free from the weight of my family's expectations. I wrote my parents a letter, not out of anger, but to speak my truth clearly, to draw a line in the sand. I sat at the hotel desk, the Savannah decision firm in my mind, and wrote, "Dear Mom and Dad, I've spent my life chasing your respect, supporting our family with hundreds of thousands of dollars while hiding my success to avoid tension. Despite building a $30 million company that empowers sustainable brands and employs dozens, I'm seen as a failure because I didn't follow your path of degrees and desk jobs. Being called a reckless failure and kicked out of your home showed me how you truly see me. I can't keep seeking approval I'll never get. I love you, but I need space to protect my peace. I hope we can rebuild someday with mutual respect. Love, Emma." I mailed it from a Savannah post office, my hands steady as I dropped the envelope in the slot, the weight of it lifting from my shoulders. I hired movers to pack my Charlotte belongings, donating most of my furniture and clothes to local shelters, wanting a fresh start with minimal baggage. The Savannah condo felt sterile at first, furnished with generic coastal decor, beige throw pillows, bland seascape prints, a glass coffee table that screamed rental property. I made it mine, replacing the pillows with hand-woven textiles from EcoVive's North Carolina weavers, swapping the prints for pottery from our Georgia artisans, and adding reclaimed wood shelves I built myself, my old upholstery skills coming in handy. I'd spend evenings arranging the space, hanging frames, arranging vases, turning the loft into a reflection of my values, sustainable, authentic, lived in. My new routine became my anchor. Morning walks along the Savannah River, where the water glinted gold at sunrise and pelicans skimmed the surface. Coffee at a family-run cafe called Maria's Brew, where the owner, Maria, a warm woman with a thick Savannah accent, greeted me by name and slipped me extra biscotti with a wink. Adopting a rescue dog named Finn, a scruffy mutt with soulful eyes who bounded alongside me on the riverfront, his tail wagging like a metronome. I'd toss a tennis ball for Finn, laughing as he chased it into the grass, his joy contagious. Those moments, quiet, simple, felt like reclaiming pieces of myself I'd lost in Charlotte. Running EcoVive remotely was smoother than I'd expected, a testament to the team I'd built over the years. My leadership crew, hired for their grit and talent, not their resumes, handled daily operations with precision, managing supplier relations, customer service, and marketing campaigns. I'd join video calls from my condo, the marsh visible through my window, discussing quarterly goals or troubleshooting a new feature. I flew back to Charlotte monthly for strategy meetings, stepping into our high-rise office, the city skyline a reminder of how far I'd come. The distance from my family gave me clarity, sharpening my decisions. Without the constant hum of their judgment, I could see EcoVive's mission more clearly, empowering artisans, making sustainability mainstream, proving that success didn't need a degree. Savannah's business community welcomed me like an old friend. I joined a women's entrepreneur group, meeting Isabel Moreno, who ran a sustainable boutique downtown filled with handcrafted jewelry and organic linens. Izzy, with her warm laugh and sharp business sense, introduced me to her circle, accomplished women in their 30s and 40s, from gallery owners to tech founders, who valued me for my achievements, not my lack of a diploma. Our weekly dinners at Izzy's loft, filled with stories of their own unconventional paths and glasses of local wine, felt like the family I'd always craved. We'd sit around her reclaimed wood table, swapping tales of business wins and failures, laughing until our sides ached, the Savannah skyline twinkling outside. 3 weeks into my new life, Nathan showed up at my condo unannounced, his rental car parked crookedly in my driveway, his navy blazer out of place among my woven rugs and pottery. "Sweet place," he said, eyeing the marsh view from my living room, his tone casual but calculated. "I'm here for family, and maybe to pitch a startup idea I'm working on." His smile was the same one he'd used to charm our parents since we were kids, but I saw through it now. I cut him off, my voice firm but calm, standing in my kitchen with Finn at my feet. "No more loans, Nathan. That chapter's closed." His face hardened, his eyes narrowing. "So you're too good for us now, huh? Mom was right about you." His words echoed the dinner, but they didn't shake me this time. I stood taller, my boundaries clear. "She called me a failure and threw me out. Is that what you came to reinforce?" He muttered something about family loyalty, his voice dripping with resentment, and left without another word, his car peeling out of the driveway. I stepped onto my deck, watching the marsh grasses sway in the breeze, Finn nuzzling my leg. For the first time, I felt unshaken, my resolve like armor. I wasn't the scared girl seeking approval anymore. A month after my move, I launched the Emma Harper Sustainability Scholarship at a Savannah community college, funding full tuition and mentorship for 5 students a year who showed entrepreneurial drive but lacked traditional academic credentials. "Focus on grit and innovation, not GPAs," I told my lawyer, emphasizing that mentors should be entrepreneurs who'd built businesses from scratch, not professors with theories. I'd meet with the students monthly in Savannah's coffee shops, their ideas, biodegradable packaging, upcycled fashion, lighting a spark in me. One student, Mia, a 20-year-old who'd dropped out to start a vegan leather brand, told me, "You make me believe I don't need a degree to matter." Her words hit harder than any magazine feature, a reminder of why I'd started EcoVive. My condo became a true home, a sanctuary that reflected my journey. I planted a garden of native grasses and wildflowers outside, attracting egrets and herons that glided over the marsh at dusk. Finn's joyful barks filled the quiet evenings, and I adopted a second rescue, a shy tabby cat named Willow, who curled up beside me as I worked late, her purring a soft comfort. I'd sit on my deck, laptop open, Finn and Willow lounging nearby, the marsh glowing under a sunset sky, feeling a peace I hadn't known in Charlotte. A month later, a Savannah Business Journal ran a feature, "Eco-Entrepreneur Redefines Success in Savannah." The article detailed EcoVive's $30 million valuation, our impact on 600 sustainable brands, and my new scholarship program, painting a vivid picture of my journey from dropout to trailblazer. The journalist had dug into public records, my condo purchase, business filings, and the piece went viral, picked up by Forbes and Fast Company, shared across LinkedIn and Instagram. Old high school classmates messaged, claiming they'd always known I'd succeed, their words ringing hollow after years of silence. Local artisans emailed, thanking me for proving you didn't need a degree to make a mark. My hometown paper in Charlotte ran a follow-up. "Local native leads green revolution." The headline felt surreal, a stark contrast to the family dinners where my work was a footnote. My parents saw the article. Margaret texted, "Saw your article, Emma. So proud of you." The words felt empty, a claim to pride she'd never shown when it mattered. Charles left a voicemail, his tone artificially cheerful. "Big news in the paper. Always knew you'd make it. Let's clear up that misunderstanding from the dinner." No apology, just a rewrite of history, as if calling me a failure and kicking me out was a minor hiccup. When they asked to visit Savannah, I agreed, but set clear terms in a calm email. "We need to talk honestly about what happened at the dinner." They booked a hotel, and we met at a riverfront cafe, the Savannah River sparkling under a noon sun. Charles looked smaller, his confident posture softened by age or unease. Margaret seemed nervous, overdressed in a stiff blouse and pearls, out of place among the casual coastal crowd. "This place is something," Charles said, gesturing at the water, his voice gruff. "You've done well, Emma." The slight emphasis on "you" carried a hint of resentment, as if my success existed outside their world. I nodded, letting the silence sit, refusing to fill it with small talk. Margaret tried, chattering about their flight delays, Savannah's humidity, how different it was from Charlotte's suburbs. I replied politely, but waited for the real conversation. Over crab cakes and iced tea, Charles finally cleared his throat. "About the dinner," he said, his voice low. "Things got heated. I was caught off guard by your news." I looked him in the eye, my voice steady, though my heart raced. "You called me a reckless failure and told me to get out. That wasn't about being surprised. It was about disrespect." Margaret twisted her napkin, her voice soft. "We just felt like you were showing off, Emma. Like you thought you were better than us." I shook my head, the words spilling out, measured but firm. "I hid my success for years to avoid that. I helped with your medical bills, Nathan's condo, Catherine's wedding, not to prove a point, but because I love you." The conversation stretched through lunch, raw and uncomfortable, the river's gentle lapping a contrast to the tension. Charles offered excuses, not apologies. "I didn't mean it like that. You blindsided us." Margaret deflected. "We've always been proud, Emma. We just worried about your future without a degree." Their presence in Savannah felt like an attempt to save face after the public articles, not a genuine desire to understand me. I invited them to my condo, wanting them to see the life I'd built, to confront the reality of my success. Their eyes widened at the marsh views, the hand-woven rugs, the pottery from eco-vibe artisans lining my shelves. "This is quite something," Charles managed, his voice tight, as if the tangible proof of my achievements was hard to swallow. I gave them a tour, pointing out every piece: a reclaimed wood table from Oregon, a ceramic vase from New Mexico, a textile throw from Asheville, each tied to the business I'd poured my life into. As we sat on my deck, the setting sun painting the marsh in shades of gold and pink, Finn nuzzling my leg and Willow curled nearby, I realized something profound. Their approval, which I'd chased for so long, no longer held power over me. I was proud of my home, my business, my life, regardless of their reaction. That revelation was worth more than any apology they might have offered. We talked late into the evening, the conversation heavy but necessary, the marsh breeze carrying the scent of salt and grass. Charles offered a half-hearted apology. "I shouldn't have said those things. Your news threw me." Margaret added, "We've always been proud, Emma. We just worried about you without a degree." Their words felt like half measures, a way to smooth over the past without owning it. I held my ground, my voice calm but unyielding. "My future is this: $30 million, 600 partners, 60 employees, all without a degree. That deserves respect, not dismissal." No tearful reconciliation followed, no movie-like group hug to tie the story in a neat bow. Instead, we reached a fragile understanding, a starting point, not a resolution. They returned to Charlotte the next day, and I kept contact limited. Short weekly calls with Margaret, her voice cautious but warmer. Fewer with Charles, who still bristled at my independence, his pride wounded by a daughter who'd outdone his expectations without his blueprint. Catherine sent a cautious apology months later, a text that read, "I should have said something at the dinner. I'm sorry. Can we talk?" We began rebuilding, meeting for coffee when I visited Charlotte, speaking as adults, not childhood rivals. Nathan remained distant, sending holiday texts but making no effort to bridge the gap, his resentment a wall I no longer tried to climb. Therapy with Dr. Nguyen became my lifeline, a space to unravel the knots of my past. Success isn't a substitute for self-worth, she told me in a session, her words sinking in like a stone in still water. She helped me see how my family's obsession with credentials had shaped my need to prove myself, driving me to give money anonymously to buy approval I'd never earn. Journaling became a ritual, my pen scratching out memories of childhood slights, Margaret praising Nathan's science fair win while ignoring my $500 furniture sale, Charles lecturing me about stability when I paid our neighbor $20 to teach me basic carpentry. Those patterns had burrowed deep, but I was unlearning them, page by page, replacing their voices with my own. I learned to give from genuine generosity, not to buy acceptance, a shift that felt like shedding a heavy coat I'd worn too long. The Emma Harper Sustainability Scholarship grew into a passion project, a way to pay forward the belief Victoria had shown me. Beyond funding tuition, I built a mentorship program, pairing students with entrepreneurs who'd faced skepticism like mine. I'd meet them in Savannah's coffee shops. Their ideas, biodegradable packaging, upcycled clothing lines, solar-powered gadgets, lighting a spark in me that felt like meeting my younger self. Mia, a 20-year-old who'd dropped out to start a vegan leather brand, became a standout. Over lattes at Maria's Brew, she'd pitch her ideas, her eyes bright with the same hunger I'd felt at her age. "You make me believe I don't need a degree to matter," she told me, her voice earnest, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. Her words hit harder than any magazine feature, a reminder of why I'd started EcoVive. Not just to succeed, but to show others they could too. My Savannah life blossomed, roots sinking deeper each day. I joined a local environmental co-op, helping organize beach cleanups along Tybee Island, my hands sandy as I hauled trash bags with volunteers. I'd stand on the shore, fin chasing waves, the ocean breeze tangling my hair, feeling part of something bigger. Izzy's friend group, women who ran galleries, tech startups, and nonprofits, became my chosen family. Our weekly dinners, filled with laughter and stories over shrimp and grits or peach cobbler, gave me a sense of belonging I'd never felt in Charlotte. My condo transformed completely, every corner reflecting my values. Hand-woven throws from EcoVive's Tennessee weavers, reclaimed wood shelves holding pottery from our New Mexico artisans, a garden of native grasses and wildflowers that drew herons and butterflies. Finn's joyful barks filled the quiet evenings, and Willow's soft purrs grounded me as I worked late, her warmth a comfort against the cool marsh air. A year after my move, I hosted a dinner on my deck for Izzy and her friends, the table set with EcoVive's ceramic plates, candles flickering in mason jars. The marsh glowed under a sunset sky, hues of orange and purple reflecting off the water, Finn and Willow lounging nearby as we shared stories. Izzy raised her glass, her eyes shining. "To living authentically and choosing respect over duty," she said, her voice warm. The toast captured everything I'd learned in Savannah. Family ties are precious, but not at the cost of dignity. Success isn't measured by degrees, but by the impact you create, the lives you touch, the truth you live. Forgiveness means letting go of pain, not erasing boundaries that protect your peace. My story's still unfolding, a work in progress. My parents and I navigate a delicate connection, sometimes slipping into old patterns, Margaret's subtle jabs about security, Charles's grudging respect. But I hold my boundaries with compassionate firmness. I've accepted that complete understanding may never come, but I won't compromise my self-worth to chase it. If this story resonates, share your own journey below. Have you faced family judgment for choosing your own path? Have you been underestimated for taking an unconventional route, for betting on yourself when no one else would? Follow and share if my story speaks to you. Thank you for listening. Remember, sometimes the family we build, the one we choose with intention, matters more than the one we're born into.